So I have made previous individual analysis videos on why Lamine Camara and Ederson would be my top central midfield targets for this summer, so I'll assume that people do have the context. If not, I'll leave them linked in the eye above. But in this particular video, I'm going to analyse why as a duo, I think they have the perfect stylistic blend and skill sets to play as the midfield double pivot in Ruben Amorim's 3-4-3, both in and out of possession in multiple different phases of play, whilst also showing you the key passing trait that Camara has that makes the likes of Angelo Stiller and Adam Walton so valuable in possession, with Ederson providing something defensively that even Ugarte can't do to the same level. So why Lamine Camara and Ederson? Well, out of possession, they both provide a high level of athleticism, aggression and speed across the ground, which I think is essential for Ruben Amorim's defensive system, particularly when United are looking to press aggressively higher up the pitch. And I'm going to explain why having a midfield double pivot like Ederson and Camara, and not just one or the other, can make a greater difference to the functioning and success of Amorim's press than people seem to realise. But before I go any further, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. They've got a variety of different current season and retro jerseys, including this 2006-2007 white Manchester United away shirt with Ronaldo 7 on the back, which they did actually send me, as well as this Juventus Zidane shirt from the 90s as well, which are two jerseys that I have been wanting for quite a while, but were incredibly hard to find. If you use code Atlantis at checkout, you'll get a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comments section below. So in pressing situations, because United have a man less in the midfield and front lines, the amount of ground that has to be covered by the midfield double pivot is substantially greater than they would have to cover in a 4-3-3, a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-3-1. See, with the front three sitting fairly narrow, but moving forward aggressively in order to apply pressure as high up the pitch as possible during the opposition's build-up phase, even with the wing-backs moving high up the flanks, in order to create a 3-4-3 pressing shape and the back three being left man for man on the halfway line, because the defensive line obviously can't squeeze up past the halfway line due to the offside rule. This means that the more aggressive the front three press, the greater amount of space is going to be left between one of United's three pressing lines. And which of the pressing lines the most amount of space is between is dependent on the positioning of the midfield double pivot. Sit closer to the front three and the space is expanded in front of the defensive line, but sit too deep and the space is there behind the front line, which almost renders the press completely ineffective from the start and will allow the opposition to play around or through the press, where from their central midfielders now have the space to turn out and play forward. And so both players in the midfield double pivot need the positional awareness and reading of the game to know how high or deep they should sit. However, when pressing high, ideally, because you want the pressing shape as vertically compact as possible, particularly at the top of the pitch, you want them as close to the front line as possible, in close proximity to man press the central midfielders as soon as they receive the ball. Which is why acceleration across shorter distances is so important, as with Casemiro, Mainu or Bruno there, despite Bruno and Mainu not exactly being slow when moving to press in these situations, Ederson and Camara are going to be quicker over 10 to 15 yards, meaning that they don't have to sit as high initially in order to man press, and when they do make their move, they're going to be a second or two quicker than the other three, which can be the difference between the opposition's central midfielders being able to receive the ball, turn and then play forward, exploiting the space behind the midfield double pivot, or alternatively receiving the ball and being unable to turn because the pressure is being applied immediately on their first touch. Now, to be fair, neither Ederson or Camara are as quick or aggressive in that front foot press as Ugarte is, as in this particular area, I would actually say that Ugarte is probably better than anyone else in the world, having exceptional reading of the game and acceleration over shorter distances, as well as the aggressive standing tackling ability in order to win the ball back. However, both Camara and Ederson are also very quick and aggressive in these types of front foot pressing situations, but on the other hand, they are significantly quicker than Ugarte over longer distances, which makes them better on the recovery when the opposition manage to either play around or through the press or counter quickly after a turnover, with Camara and Ederson in particular able to eat up the ground a lot more efficiently than Ugarte, engaging the player running with the ball, wherefrom they can either jockey and hold their ground in order to stifle the progression of the attack, holding their ground to stifle the progression of the attack in order to allow the players caught high up the pitch to get back behind the ball, or they can use their physicality and tackling ability to either win a physical standing duel or go to ground with a crunching sliding tackle in order to halt the attack before it progresses into a dangerous position in the United defensive third. Now don't get me wrong, Ugarte certainly isn't a liability when running back on the recovery in the same way that Casemiro can be, but Camara and Ederson are a lot closer to his ability when it comes to front foot pressing than he is to them when it comes to this sort of recovery, which is why I think Camara and Ederson would be starters, whilst Ugarte would be reserved for particular opponents when Amorim has a specific game plan to either press or counter press aggressively, likely targeting a specific player. However, in possession there's a massive disparity between Ugarte and the other two, as both Ederson and Camara are comfortably better when it comes to their progressive passing, receiving the ball in tight spaces under immediate pressure, either in the middle third during settled possession, or in the defensive third during the build-up phase, whilst also being better carriers of the ball into space and more creative with their passing in the opposition's half as well, which can be seen clearly when you compare both players' passing sections of their FB ref reports over the past 365 days with Ugarte's. But what specifically about Ederson and Camara's individual abilities in possession makes them the optimal stylistic fit as a duo? Well, Ederson from a statistical point of view all round looks highly complete when it comes to progressing the ball forward either through take-ons, carries or his passing. However, his pace and power means that he specialises when it comes to transitioning the attack quickly via carries into open space, being an absolute machine when driving the attack forward in these type of situations. And whilst just from looking at their FB ref reports you may think that Camara is around the same level or even slightly inferior to Ederson when it comes to his progressive passing, from the eye test you can see that Lamine Camara has one specific trait in common with the likes of Angelo Stiller and Adam Walton that makes them so efficient in deeper areas of the pitch in possession, and that's his ability to disguise passes, shaping like he's going to play the pass on the outside of a player before at the last second closing his hips on the ball and threading the pass on the inside, which not only makes it incredibly hard for the opposition player to anticipate and intercept, but also is tailor-made for Ruben Amorim's ball progression strategy during settled possession in the middle third. In the build-up phase, whilst we do often see Ruben Amorim's side look to build out through wider areas, being willing to use longer, more direct passes into the centre forward when needed, as his side are able to move the ball higher up the pitch into the middle third, there is an increased focus on being highly intentional with playing through the centre of the pitch, with the back three often negating to play simple passes wide, even when passes centrally are being cut off, instead being prepared to continuously circulate the ball between each other, or even hold on to the ball and adjust the passing angle themselves, in order to open up a passing lane centrally, looking for the pass into the midfield double pivot. And so the press resistance and technical ability of both central midfielders needs to be very high in order to receive passes at pace and under immediate pressure from behind, being able to get the ball under control quickly and find a pass wide or through the opposition's midfield line. But also in the build-up phase, the main issue that United have had this season is not being able to play through the centre frequently enough, resulting in them going wide far too early on in the build-up phase and then being forced long far too often throughout a game. Ugarte in the midfield double pivot is somewhat of a liability in possession, particularly in the build-up phase when receiving the ball with his back to goal under pressure, where unlike both Camara and Ederson, he doesn't have the composure, awareness or technical ability to be able to kill the pass and get the ball under control immediately, often taking an extra unnecessary touch, inviting pressure, and as we saw against Athletic Bilbao in the away first leg, this can often lead to him getting caught on the ball or rushed into a poor pass. Now I wouldn't say that Ederson is the sort of Adam Walton or Zubimendi type who excels when receiving the ball under pressure with his back to goal, but he is technically good enough to either be able to bounce the ball first time around or out of the press, or take an optimal first touch and then being able to use his upper body and quad strength to be able to hold off the pressure before finding a pass out of it. But this is why Camara and Ederson are such a good stylistic fit, as Camara is very press resistant, having the sort of fluid press resistance that we see from the likes of Walton and Zubimendi, able to shape like he's going to go one way, enticing the pressure, before then fluidly turning in the other direction, wrong-footing the pressing player, and being able to play out, as well as having the awareness, vision and composure to be able to play subtle passes around the corner, progressing the ball forward, goal side of the press, where other players in these type of situations may instead resort for a simpler pass wide, which does retain possession but still keeps the ball in front of the pressure. And so hopefully with a player like Lamine Camara in this deeper central area in the build-up phase, rather than having a central centre-back stationed on the edge of the box, Amorim can adjust which players are positioned in what areas during the build-up phase, and instead have Lamine Camara positioned there, who's going to be far better than any centre-back when engaging in short passing interplay around his own box, as well as twisting and turning out of pressure himself. Whilst Camara specialises in progressive passing, Ederson specialises when it comes to transitioning the attack quickly by carrying the ball into space, making him a valuable player to have when there's a turnover in United's half and the opposition are caught in their possession shape with a greater amount of space between their midfield and defensive players, compared to when United have settled possession in the middle third and the opposition are able to get back into a narrow and compact defensive shape, opening up the opportunity for Ederson to drive the counter-attack forward, from where the front three can now provide the movement in behind the back line, with Ederson's pace and power allowing United to transition the attack from their own half into the opposition's half and final third at a significantly greater speed to what we currently see, which should lead to more frequent high-value goal-scoring opportunities being created throughout a game. Now, Lamine Camara can also do this to a fairly decent level, but is his passing game both incisive between the lines and via long switches of play which are far better than his ball carrying into space, whereas it's the opposite with Ederson. But what makes both players perfect is their skill set is so complete that they are able to do both to a fairly high standard and really don't have any significant weaknesses in their game. Now, in settled possession in the middle third and in the opposition's half, Camara and Ederson can both sit in the rest defence in front of the back three, with both players having the recovery speed and reading of the game to excel at stopping the opposition countering on United when there is a turnover, with Ederson in particular excelling when tracking runners from deep and stopping them being released in behind the back line, whilst Camara in the rest defence can operate as an orchestrator of the attack, knowing when and how to keep play circulating and when to inject pace into the attack with an incisive pass between the lines or a long switch of play. Now, in another video I'll go into some tactical models in a bit more detail, looking at different patterns of play that Amorim could use with Ederson and Camara in order to allow both the wing backs and wide centre backs to be more adventurous with their forward runs from deep. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and you can click the bell so you do get notified when that video does come out. But overall, Camara and Ederson tick all of the boxes, both in and out of possession, being two of the most complete central midfielders on the market this summer, and specialising in slightly different attributes, which would give Ruben Amorim the perfect blend between press resistance and creative passing, as well as powerful ball carrying ability, as well as goal scoring output in the final third. Camara at 21 for around £40 million, and Ederson soon to be 26 for around £50 million, to me seems like great value for money when upgrading the midfield, considering you've got the likes of Walton and Baleba, who individually are likely to be valued at around £80 million plus. So let me know what you think of Ederson and Lamine Camara as a midfield double pivot, and if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to jerseyfifa.co. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the comment section and description below, and if you want to check out any of my articles or get access to my Instagram group chat, I'll leave that linked on the end screen now as well.